I first saw the lights on a night pass over the Indian Ocean. The station was drifting in the long dark, the kind that makes the world look like it is sunk into itself. I was alone in the cupola, strapped in only by habit. The earth moved beneath me the way a tired horse walks, slow, steady, without pride. I had been up here long enough to know every shape a storm could make, and every odd glint from shipping lanes and fishing fleets. These lights were not storms. They were too straight, too sharp. They cut across the ocean in white lines, as if someone below was scoring the water with a hot blade. They held steady against the curve of the earth, as if the planet itself were a flat sheet of metal under them. I blinked, rubbed the lids with my knuckles. When I opened my eyes again, they were still there. Lines, moving slowly. A few at first, then more behind them. They did not flicker. Lightning flickers. These held. I called Mission Control and told them what I saw. I kept my voice steady because men like us are trained to keep our voices steady even when something crawls into your spine and hangs there. They said they had nothing on radar. They said weather patterns had been strange. They said to rest, that fatigue plays tricks. They were wrong. Fatigue makes you see old ghosts from childhood. These lights were new. The hum of the station felt loud after the call. The fans, the pipes, the small bones of the place shifting in heat and cold. I watched the lines until they slipped behind the curve of the world. I waited for them to return on the next orbit, but that section of the planet had rolled into daylight by then, and I couldn't see anything. I tried to sleep, but sleep felt far from me, like a lake you can see but cannot reach. The others were asleep down the module, Davies with his bunk curtain half open, Sato curled in her bag like a child hiding from the cold. I did not wake them, not yet. There was something private about the moment, as if I had been chosen to see the first sign. Or cursed to. The station turned again. The sun came out from behind the horizon with its usual brutality. It filled the cupola with gold and made the earth look warm and peaceful. The lines were gone now, disappeared with the night. But the memory of them stayed sharp as a blade inside me. Later, when Davies brewed the weak coffee we rationed like gold, he asked why I looked tired. I said I hadn't slept. He didn't ask more. Up here, we don't pry, unless someone's hands shake. That evening I went back to the cupola as the night came again. The station moved into the dark, smooth as slipping underwater. I searched the ocean, and there they were again. More of them this time. Bright and slow and deliberate. I whispered out loud without meaning to. Jesus! The earth kept turning. The lines kept moving. My heart beat slow and hard like a fist knocking from the inside. I didn't call Mission Control this time. I only watched. When the sun rose again, I stayed there a long time in the warm gold light, waiting to see if the lines would burn away with the shadows. But they didn't. Even in daylight, I thought I could see faint white scars along the coast, like something had touched the water and left its mark. That was February, and nothing has felt right since. The lines did not leave. If anything, they grew. On the next few passes over the night side, I counted more each time. They ran across the oceans like someone had taken a ruler and drawn paths in white fire. Sometimes the paths bent slightly at the coasts, but not the way ships or aircraft would. More like they were following something deeper under the surface, something we didn't know about. For a while, I tried to keep it to myself. I watched them during each night pass, and I kept quiet during the day while Davies joked and Sato logged her experiments. There is a strange kind of pride in being the first to see something unusual. You feel like you're carrying a secret no one else deserves yet. But the more I watched, the more I felt the secret tightening around my ribs like a belt. 2 weeks passed. Then Davies saw them. It was late. He drifted into the cupola without announcing himself, rubbing sleep from one eye, the other half closed. He floated next to me, braced his hand on the metal frame, and followed my gaze down toward the earth. "Storms?" he said. "No." He leaned forward until his helmet almost touched the glass. "Christ," he whispered. The white lines were everywhere now, hundreds of them, They moved slowly, too slow for aircraft, too straight for any weather system, too purposeful for anything alive. They crawled across the oceans in perfect, measured movements, like threads being pulled through cloth. I looked at Davies's hands gripping the rail. I could see the whiteness in his knuckles. He had always been steady, always calm, always able to talk about landing procedures even when the capsule rattled like a tin can. But now he breathed through his nose in long, hard breaths, the kind you use to steady yourself before giving bad news to a family member. "You didn't report this?" he asked. "I did," I said. "First night." "What did they say?" I shrugged. "Nothing on radar, nothing unusual." He snorted. "They say that even when there's a hurricane about to knock on Houston's door." Sato came the next night. We didn't call her. She had trouble sleeping and drifted into the cupola out of habit. She saw the lines even before she spoke. She grabbed the window frame and stared. "What are those?" she asked, her voice small. "We don't know," Davies said. "They don't behave like any orbital reflection," she said, "and they're too uniform to be seismic activity." "We're open to ideas," he said. Sato watched them a long while and said nothing more. After that, none of us slept well, and when we did, we dreamed of lines, white ones, glowing ones, ones that stretched across the sea and cut through the continents like needles through skin. The earth looked like it was being measured for something, prepared. One morning, during a daylight pass, Davies asked me where I thought they came from. "Not Earth," I said. He nodded as if he already knew. Maybe he had known from the first moment. Maybe we all had. Mission Control kept dismissing everything. Instrument glitches, they said. Reflection artifacts from solar panels. It felt like talking to someone who refuses to admit a house is burning, even while smoke fills the room. Maybe they were afraid. Maybe they saw it too, but didn't want to say it. On the 14th night, after Davies first saw the lights, the lines did something new. They stopped. Every one of them. Frozen. Perfectly still, spread across the world like a net. "What does it mean?" Sato asked. "It means," Davies said, "something's about to happen." We looked down in silence. The station creaked around us. I felt the smallest tremble pass through my chest. Fear, maybe. Or the knowledge that whatever was happening on that fragile blue world below us was beyond anything we had prepared for. And for the first time since I had launched into space, I felt something I had not expected to feel up here. Helplessness, pure and simple as a cut to the bone. By March, the world no longer looked like the world I had known. The white lines thickened until they seemed carved into the ocean itself. Sometimes they converged, sometimes they branched away in clean angles like river deltas made of light. They had a kind of patience that felt unnerving. Nothing on Earth moved that slowly or that precisely unless it was built by a mind that had no regard for winds or currents or tide. We passed over the Pacific one morning, still half in darkness. The lines shivered with faint brightness. They didn't flicker the way lightning does. They breathed. Long, pale pulses that flowed from one end to the other. The effect was like watching a living map, some great organism testing its nerves. I called Mission Control again. Davies drifted beside me with his arms folded, floating in place as if trying to anchor himself. Sato stood behind us with her feet in the looped restraints, her face set in a calm mask she had worn every day for these past weeks. I told Houston what we were seeing. I kept my voice steady, slow, certain. I described the pulses and the geometry and how the lines had formed a perfect grid across half the ocean. They asked us to confirm timestamps. They asked if any of us had slept poorly. They asked if there had been any changes in the cupola glass. They did not ask the question we needed them to ask, "What if you're right?" Instead, they sent us to diagnostics. We ran them. They were clean. Every panel, every channel, every sensor. We told them this. They sent us more tests. Sato floated the pad toward me. "They don't believe us," she said. Davies didn't turn away from the window. Maybe they can't, he said. After that, we stopped calling. There was no point talking to men who had decided not to hear. The lines continued their work. At night I watched them push toward the coasts. They moved like roots seeking land. They didn't follow ridges or trenches or underwater topography. They followed some pattern that didn't belong to Earth. Sometimes I could feel the station turn under me, but the lines remained steady in my sight, as if they were fixed in their own coordinate system. Then the silence came. One morning, we woke to the soft beep of a lost signal. The main channel was gone. Sato tried the backup, then the military band, then the emergency band. Nothing. It was like calling into a forest and hearing no echo. We floated in the module, all three of us, listening to the faint hiss of static. The air recycler hummed. Something clicked in the piping. That was all. Davies pushed off gently and headed back to the cupola. I followed him. Sato stayed behind for a while, but after a few minutes I heard her drifting up as well. We looked at Earth. The daylight passed over China, then the Pacific, then the long curve toward the Americas. The white lines still pulsed, but slower now, like they had reached a resting heartbeat. None of the cities were lit. Not one. Usually you could see the coastlines before anything else, strings of gold along the dark edges of the continents. But that morning, there was nothing. The land masses were blank, empty shapes against the gray-blue of the oceans. "Grid down?" Davies said. "Everywhere?" Sato asked. We floated there for a long time. I tried to imagine a reason the entire planet would go dark all at once. No comet, no flare, no world war could cause that kind of silence. The truth felt like something I had already accepted without speaking it. I watched the white lines pulse again, very faint, almost tired. The Earth looked older that morning, older and somehow smaller. I wished I could tell someone on the ground that we were still here, that we hadn't left them, that we were watching. But there was no one listening, and maybe no one left to hear us. April began with a strange kind of stillness. The world had gone dark weeks before, and by then we had grown used to the sight of a silent planet. But there was something different in the air of the station that morning. A pressure. The way you feel the heaviness in the sky before a storm breaks. We carried it without speaking of it. We drifted through our routines like men performing rituals for gods who had stopped listening. Sato checked the algae loops. Davies tested the oxygen scrubbers. I tightened straps, wiped panels, logged numbers that had not changed in days. It all felt like sweeping a house long abandoned. The station turned toward the night side. I went to the cupola out of habit. It had become my anchor. From there I could pretend the world might light up again. That somewhere on the surface someone had flipped a switch and restored some small part of the life we knew. That was when I saw it. At first it looked like a shadow, a dark shape against the deeper dark of space. But shadows don't move on their own, and they don't glide with a smoothness that ignores gravity, wind, or reason. The ship slid into the upper atmosphere, slow as dusk rolling over a plain. It was black, not the black of space, but something deeper, something that seemed to swallow any light that touched it. It had no wings, no engines, no angles or edges. It looked a little like a massive boulder, smoothed by centuries of water, but it moved with intention, not weight. I called for the others. My voice didn't sound like my own. Davies was the first to reach me. He said nothing at first. He only pressed his forehead close to the glass and watched. Then he let out a small breath, one that seemed pulled out of him rather than given. Sato arrived last. "Is it a ship?" she asked. "What else could it be?" Davies said. The object drifted lower. The glow from the white lines on the Earth brightened beneath it, as if responding to its presence. The grid pulsed, once, slow and deliberate. A kind of signal, a greeting or a surrender. It was impossible to know. The ship crossed over the curve of the world with the patience of an old sea creature rising from deep water. It didn't burn. It didn't heat up the atmosphere. It didn't disturb a single cloud. It simply moved, silent and certain, like something returning to a home it had never needed permission to enter. As it descended, the lines on the ground changed. They softened, spread, their angles rounded, their paths thickened, and in some places they joined into larger glowing branches. It was like watching a nervous system respond to a command from its brain. "Jesus," Davy said, "they're connected." "Maybe they always were," Sato said. When the ship reached the thicker layers of the atmosphere, clouds swallowed it. The white grid brightened once more beneath it, then dimmed. For a moment, I thought I saw a flare, small, quick, like a spark inside a furnace. We waited for something else to happen, a flash, a quake, a ripple in the air, but nothing came. The ship was gone, hidden in the clouds, leaving the world below, looking just as empty as it had an hour before. Davies rested his head against the metal frame. "Well," he said quietly, "that's that." He said it in the same tone a man uses when he folds the last card of a losing hand. No one spoke for a long time. We watched the clouds drift over the ocean. The white lines dimmed, then steadied, as if returning to their slow work. Later, after the sun rose, I made a note in the log. Unidentified object entered atmosphere. No observable reaction from Earth outside known phenomena. It felt absurd to write it that way. Clean, technical, detached. But that is how we are trained to speak. Even when our bones know we've just watched the beginning of something no training prepared us for. All through the day, I kept replaying one thought. They were late in arriving. The lines had been the first wave. The preparation. The ship was only the next step. For the first time in my life, I hoped the ground was wrong, and we were right, that there was someone down there still watching, still fighting, still alive to see the sky change. But deep down, I knew the truth even then. The world had not gone silent because it was hiding. It had gone silent because it had been overtaken. After the ship vanished into the atmosphere, nothing happened for a long time. That was the strangest part. You expect noise in the wake of something terrible. You expect consequence. But the world below stayed still. The white lines breathed their slow pulse, cities stayed dark, and the comm channels stayed dead. We kept rationing food and water, though we all felt the futility. Rations are for survivors. We were witnesses. There is a difference. Still, it gave the hands something to do, and action keeps the mind steady, even when the end is obvious. By the second week of April, all pretense of normal routine had died. Sato monitored the algae tanks, but her notes grew shorter each day until they were little more than numbers scrawled on a pad. Davies stopped shaving. I stopped logging the sunrise cycles. The Earth turned underneath us, and we turned with it, orbit by orbit, as if we were flies caught in the quiet spin of a dying globe. The first collapse we saw happened over the United States. It was sudden. One night pass, the eastern seaboard was faintly lit with a handful of emergency grids, dotted outlines of what had once been a coastline of fire. The next pass, everything was gone. The land was black. From Quebec to Florida, a clean darkness had swallowed it whole. Davies made a sound in his throat when he saw it. Tight, low, almost like someone punched the wind out of him. I pretended not to notice. Men deserve dignity even in fear. Sato reached for his arm. He shook her off, gently but firmly, the way a man shakes off a hand when he's holding back something he doesn't want witnessed. "It's not natural," he said. "No," I said. "It's like someone blew out the whole coast," he said. "Like candles." He looked down a long time after that. When he finally drifted away from the window, he moved like an old man. Slow, heavy-hearted. I wondered if he was thinking of his father in Maine, or of the field he had grown up playing baseball in. It's strange. The mind never clings to the big things when the world ends. It holds the small comforts instead. A wooden swing, a cold lake, a kitchen table. Days passed. We watched Europe go dark the same way. Then parts of Asia, then South America. Africa held on the longest. Cities dimmed slowly there, like embers starving of oxygen. I don't know why it happened differently. Maybe the ships had a pattern. Maybe the lines beneath the oceans were moving inland in some sequence none of us could see. Around this time, something unusual began showing up on the surface. Faint glimmers, flashing pockets that came and went. At first, we thought it might be fires, or explosions, or signals from survivors. But the flashes were too even, too measured. They followed the geometry of the white lines. It was like watching the nervous system of some creature responding to stress. "Maybe people are fighting," Sato said. "Or maybe it's not people at all," Davies said. His voice sounded dry, cracked from disuse. We watched the flashes for hours. They always ended in silence. The grid dimmed afterward, like nerves settling under anesthesia. The world below looked worn, scarred. Not wounded by war, but reshaped by something that didn't need war to take control. Then the strangest thing happened, something we never expected. For a brief stretch, maybe an hour or two during one orbit, we saw movement. Not the ships, something else. On the ground. On the edges of the white lines near the coasts, large shapes drifted across the land. Slowly, too big to be vehicles, too steady to be storms. They were dark masses casting shadows across the broken continents. They moved with the same patience as the lines, as if connected to them or guided by them. "What are those?" Sato whispered. "Harvesters," Davies said without hesitation. It was a guess, a terrible one, but neither of us argued. The station moved on. The shapes remained behind, drifting, carrying out whatever purpose they had come for. We waited to see if they would appear again on the next pass, but they were gone. Only the fading pulse of the grid remained. Then came the silence. A silence deeper than anything before. Not just a lack of communication, a lack of presence. The earth looked empty, so empty it hurt to look at it. I didn't say anything to the others, but that was when I realized something had ended, not begun, ended. Whatever the ships were doing, whatever the lines had been building toward, it wasn't preparation for an invasion. It was the final stage of one. May came in quietly, like a man walking into a room where someone has died. The air inside the station felt heavier, though it hadn't changed. Maybe it was the way we breathed, slow, careful, like we were trying not to disturb something. By then we had already stopped talking much, not out of anger, but because words felt dishonest. What could we say? The earth is gone. We're alive, but only by accident. Nothing sounded right. Nothing mattered. So we spoke only when duty forced us to. The world below had changed again. Not brightly, not violently. It changed the way metal changes when a craftsman works it, pushed, pulled, reshaped without breaking. The white lines had lost much of their glow, as if the energy inside them had been drained for something larger. They remained, but softer now. Quiet, like scars instead of wounds. On the 9th day of May, Sato was the first to see the shapes rising. We were eating, or pretending to, rehydrated vegetables, broken into smaller portions than any human should willingly accept. Davies had stopped talking during meals altogether. I heard Sato's spoon clink off the wall when she let go, her eyes wide. "Look," she said. Something was rising from the earth, not one thing, many, small at first, dark specks pushing up from the atmosphere like sparks. But these sparks didn't break apart or burn. They rose steadily, calmly, as if buoyed by some invisible current. I pressed my forehead against the cupola glass. Davies drifted beside me, his expression hard and unreadable. Sato hovered behind us, barely breathing. More shapes emerged from the atmosphere, dozens, then hundreds, thousands, lifting off continents, oceans, coastlines, ascending with no fire, no exhaust, no force, just rising, patient and undeniable. "What are they?" Sato whispered. Davies shook his head. His silence said more than any words could have. The shapes kept climbing. They were dark, almost featureless, like stones being pulled upward by a tide we couldn't see. A few came close enough to the station for us to see they were not rocks. Their surfaces shifted, changed, not fluid, not solid, something between. For a moment, one of them drifted close to the port window. I could see ridges forming and dissolving on its surface, as if it were thinking. Sato said very quietly, "It's observing." I didn't know how she knew, but I believed her. Then the shape moved away. No engine, no sound, no hurry. The others followed it, forming a scattered ring around the planet. They drifted into a rough orbit, just outside the atmosphere, not evenly spaced, but deliberate, like sentries taking positions. A blockade, a perimeter, or maybe a cocoon. "What do we do?" Sato asked. Davies stared at the ring forming around Earth. "What can we do?" Nothing. The truth hung heavy in the air like moisture. We had food for maybe 6 weeks, water for slightly longer. But that wasn't what mattered. What mattered was that whatever was happening down there was spreading up here. The shapes did not leave. They stayed in orbit, a dark ring around a dark world. Watching, waiting. For what? We couldn't guess. We didn't have the imagination for it. During the next few days, the shapes adjusted their positions. One passed by the station again, closer this time. It hovered just beyond the glass, so near I felt like I could reach out and touch it. Its surface moved subtly, like the skin of a creature trying to understand the warmth of a hand. Sato whispered, "It's mapping us." I felt a coldness inside me then, deeper than fear. It wasn't looking at us the way predators look at prey. It was looking the way craftsmen look at old tools, measuring their usefulness. Eventually, the shape drifted away again, leaving us with the quiet hum of the station and the slow spin of the world beneath us. That night, or what passed for night, none of us slept. Davies kept his hands clenched in his sleeping bag. Sato turned in her restraints, twisting the straps until they creaked. I floated awake in the dim light, listening to the breathing of the only 2 people left in my universe. The earth below turned in silence. The shapes above circled it like funeral birds. And I began to realize something terrible. Those shapes had not come to attack. They had come to replace. By June, time had thinned out. The days didn't feel like days anymore. Up here, you lose the rhythm of sunrise and sunset. You circle the earth every 90 minutes. Light becomes a kind of nuisance. Dark becomes the same. The only real measure of time was in how our thoughts changed. Davies stopped shaving altogether. His beard floated around his jaw in uneven little tufts, drifting slightly every time he turned his head. Sato worked less. She still recorded readings when she remembered, but the neat lines of her handwriting had grown shaky, distracted. She used to hum while doing maintenance, soft little songs in Japanese. She didn't hum now. And me. My thoughts were slower, heavier, like they had to swim through mud before reaching my mouth. Some days I said nothing at all. The earth below seemed to change too, though in subtle ways. With the cities dark for so long, the land had taken on a uniform tone, a muted gray-brown like old paper. Dust storms wandered across continents without any interference from the works of man. Coastlines lost their sharpness. Fires burned here and there, but they didn't look like battles. They looked like slow decay, like nature trying to breathe under a new skin. Every few hours, the ring of alien shapes shifted their positions. Sometimes one would stop for hours above the same point on Earth. Sometimes they drifted in slow arcs, like they were tracing patterns around the planet. None behaved randomly. There was a rhythm to their movements, though we didn't understand it. "We need to consider returning home," Davies said one morning, his voice flat. "To what?" Sato asked, not cruelly, just tired. Davies didn't answer. He strapped himself near the galley table and rubbed a hand across his face, squeezing his eyes shut. "Better to die down there than starve up here." "We don't know what's down there," Sato said. "We know what's up here," he replied. Neither was wrong. I stayed quiet for a long time before saying anything. "We can't enter the atmosphere with that ring out there." Davies opened his eyes. They looked red, sleep-starved. "So what? We wait until they take the station too?" Sato looked at me, a silent plea asking me not to agree with him. I didn't. Truth was, I didn't have a side. The ground was gone. The sky was taken. The station was a coffin no matter what we chose. Still, instinct told me one thing. Whatever waited on Earth wasn't meant for us. That night, Davies didn't speak to us. He drifted in the cupola alone, watching Earth pass under the station for hours at a time. He looked smaller there, framed by the great glass panels, like a man staring into the grave of someone he loved. Sato and I ate dinner in silence. Before going to sleep, she said, "He's losing hope." I didn't know how to answer. Hope had become a word with no meaning up here, like winter or rain or traffic. Things we remembered rather than lived. During the next orbital pass, we saw something that changed the tone in the station. On the coast of what had once been India, a faint glow appeared. Not a city, not fire, something else. A line, thicker than the others, rose from the ground straight into the air like a white pillar. It stretched upward until the clouds swallowed it. We never saw the top. "What is that?" Sato asked. Davies drifted closer to the glass. His face reflected pale in the window. "A tower," he said. "Too thin," Sato whispered. "It's not a structure," I said. "It's some kind of energy." As if hearing us, the tower pulsed once, bright enough to wash the clouds in white. Then it dimmed. Then it went dark altogether. "We're watching the world being rewritten," Davies murmured. No one disagreed. After that, Sato slept less. Davies slept not at all. He stayed in the cupola most nights, staring down at Earth like a man waiting for an answer to a question he had not spoken aloud. And every hour or so he looked at the Soyuz capsule. Not openly, not obviously, but he looked, measuring the distance between hopelessness and action. One night, while floating toward the hygiene module, I heard him muttering, words too soft to understand. I saw him turn toward the cupola window, fists clenched, and whisper, "I can't stay here. I can't die here." He wasn't speaking to us. He was speaking to the ship, or maybe to himself. In the morning, Sato asked me if I thought he'd try something. "Yes," I said. She stared down at her hands. "Will we stop him?" I didn't answer, because I didn't know. We watched the Earth, watched the dark shapes in orbit, watched the grid continue its slow fading. The world was changing, but not with violence, with indifference. The worst kind of ending is the one that doesn't even notice you. June deepened. It didn't feel like a month anymore. Just a long stretch of time with no edges. Our orbit tugged us forward, and the Earth turned below in its dark silence, and the three of us drifted like moths trapped in a glass lamp. Davies had become restless, though restless isn't the right word. It was a quieter kind of desperation, a tightening. A man who saw only two doors left in the world, one he refused to take, and one he feared. Every day I caught him glancing at the Soyuz. He didn't speak about it for a long time, but I could feel the question working inside him like a nail in his shoe. The alien ring above Earth didn't change much. The dark shapes held their positions, drifting in slow arcs when they needed to, adjusting with that same awful patience. They never came close to colliding. They moved as if controlled by a single mind. Or perhaps they were the mind. Sato didn't want to return home. She said the word home differently now, like it was something she read in a book once. She kept to her observations, writing little notes with smaller and smaller handwriting. Sometimes I caught her staring at them afterward, as if trying to remember why she had written them at all. The silence from Earth had stopped bothering me. That was the worst part. You get used to anything if it lasts long enough. Even the end of everything you grew up believing mattered. It was on the 13th of June that Davies finally spoke plainly. "We can't stay here, Carl," he said. We were in the service module. The lights were dim, the fans humming. Sato floated above the table, sorting dried food packets by habit. Davies had braced himself by a handrail, jaw tight. "We have to try," he said. "We have to go down. Better to die on Earth than drift up here like ghosts." I kept my voice steady. "The ring will destroy us." "You don't know that." "We've seen what they do," I said. He shook his head. "We've seen what they do to the ground. Not to us." "They don't need to hurt us," I said. "We're not a threat." "That's exactly why going home is safer." Sato turned to him. "You don't understand," she said softly. "Whatever they are building, whatever they want, they don't want witnesses." "There are no witnesses left," Davies fired back. "There's no one alive down there anymore." He said it with a certainty that chilled me. We hadn't said it aloud before, not even to ourselves. Sato lowered her eyes. "We don't know that." "We do," Davies said. We drifted in silence for a while. The hum of the fans filled the module, a soft mechanical heartbeat that felt more real than any human one. Davies rubbed a hand across his face, then grabbed the rail again as if steadying himself. "We can't starve here," he said quietly. "Not like animals trapped in an attic." He was right, but that wasn't the question anymore. The question was fate. The alien shapes moved again outside the window, adjusting their orbit, slow, coordinated, beautiful in a way that hurt to admit. Things made with purpose always have a beauty to them. "Look," Sato said. We drifted to the cupola. A new glow rose from the Amazon basin, large, wide, a circular light expanding like a white halo. It pulsed slowly, sending a ripple through the fading grid lines stretching across South America. "What is that?" Davies whispered. "Expansion," Sato said. "Whatever the lines were doing before, they're doing more of it now." Davies stared a long time. Then he said it again, quieter. "I'm going home." He said it the way a man says, "I'm going to see her," or "I'm turning myself in," or "I'm ready." Not angry, just resolved. Sato put a hand on his arm. "Davies, please." He slid away from her touch, gentle but firm. "Don't try to stop me." "You'll die," she said. "We're already dead," he replied. He pushed himself toward the docking node. I watched him go. Sato watched him too, face pale, eyes wide. I didn't move, not because I agreed or disagreed, but because I had seen something in his face that told me he wasn't asking permission. He was already gone inside himself. Sato grabbed the rail with both hands. "We have to stop him." "No," I said. She stared at me, hurt and astonished. "Why?" she whispered. "Because he's right," I said. "He deserves to choose." She closed her eyes. When she opened them again, she looked older. Davies floated inside the airlock, one hand on the hatch, the other gripping the paneled wall for balance. He didn't look back at us. He said only one sentence, "I'm going home." Then he pressed the control, and the door slid shut. Davies didn't wait. The moment the airlock shut, we heard the dull vibration of the cycle beginning. It was a sound every astronaut knows by heart. The machinery that separates life from death, with nothing more than a seal and a pump. He had made his choice, and now the machines carried it out without hesitation. Sato launched herself toward the hatch, fingers brushing metal as if she could pry it open with her bare hands. I caught her by the straps of her jumpsuit before she hurt herself. "No," I said. She shook her head violently. "We can't just let him." But the airlock was already completing its sequence. You can't override it mid-cycle without blowing the station open. She knew that. I knew it. The terrible part was accepting it. Inside, through the small round window, we could see Davies bracing himself in the tight compartment. His helmet was already on. He must have suited up the instant the argument ended. The visor reflected the interior lights in a way that made his face look ghostly, washed out. He didn't look at us, not once. The outer hatch opened slowly. It always feels slow, even though in truth it moves with mechanical precision. A sliver of black space widened inch by inch until it swallowed the entire frame. And then Davies pushed off. For a moment he drifted in the rectangle of the hatchway, a lone shape outlined against the stars. Then he floated free, unanchored, drifting into the pale curve of the earth below. Sato pressed both hands to the window. "Davies!" she cried. But it was a sound swallowed by layers of glass, metal, vacuum, by distance itself. He didn't turn, or couldn't. His body rotated slowly as he fell toward the planet. We watched him spin, a slow, helpless tumble that made my chest tighten. His tether lines trailed behind him like ribbons. His arms drifted out as he turned, weightless, small, alone. Some men die in an instant. Some die over years. Davies died in a fall that felt like an hour, even though it lasted only minutes. Earth's gravity reached for him gently at first, then faster. His path curved downward, pulled into the atmosphere. From our orbit, it looked peaceful, a drifting descent through a dark, blue silence. But I knew better. Sato sobbed quietly beside me. Not loud, not dramatic. A small, steady sound of someone who has finally lost the last familiar thing in a world already taken from her. I kept my hand on her shoulder. It was all I could do. As Davies approached the atmosphere, his suit caught a faint rim of light, sunlight reflecting off the visor. Then his silhouette shrank and shrank again until he was nothing more than a bright pinprick against the curve of the earth. Then the pinprick flared, a thin streak of white, then red. The fire swallowed him too quickly for pain. Sato turned away. She hid her face in her hands and floated with her knees drawn up. I stayed at the window. I watched the last trace of him burn out against the air of a world that no longer belonged to us. I don't know how long we stayed like that. Eventually, the station continued its orbit, dragging us back into daylight. The sunlight flooded the cupola and washed over everything, turning the glass golden, warming the metal under my palm. The earth rolled on below us, calm as ever. No storms and no cities, no sign of life. Only the faint alien lines, pulsing like veins too deep to see clearly. And scattered across the sky, the dark shapes, those watchful things, continued their patrol. Sato finally spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. Why would he do it? I kept my eyes on the world below. Because he wanted to die on Earth. He didn't even make it, she said. No, I said, but he got closer than we will. Her breath shuddered. I hate them. I didn't answer. Hate felt too small a word for what had happened to us, too human. Whatever had taken the ground, and now Davies, did not operate on human terms. It didn't mourn. It didn't punish. It simply continued. Later, when Sato fell asleep in her bag, I returned to the cupola alone. The earth was slipping into night again. The alien grid glowed faintly across the continents, like the embers of a fire someone had buried under ash. I rested my forehead against the glass. Davies' final words echoed in the metal and in my bones. I'm going home. But there was no home left to go to. Not for him. Not for us. The station felt wrong after Davies was gone. Not emptier. Emptiness was something we had grown used to, but unbalanced, like a three-legged stool after one leg snaps. The air sounded different. The walls echoed more. Even the hum of the recycler felt off-key, though nothing had changed in the machinery. Sometimes the human mind spots imbalance long before the body realizes what's missing. Sato floated through the modules with a quiet, heavy slowness. She didn't speak unless she needed to, and even then only the smallest words. Pass me that. Check valve. Water. Her voice was thin, almost transparent, like a thread pulled too long. I tried to work. I cleaned the filters. I adjusted the power draw. I filed a few notes to no one. The motion steadied my hands, but they didn't steady anything else. Every time I passed the airlock, I found myself looking at the latch, at the place Davies had touched before slipping away. I could almost see the shape of his hand there. The next morning, if morning has meaning up here, I woke to Sato calling my name, not loudly, barely above a whisper. "Carl," she said, "come look." Her face was pale, and her eyes were wide in a way that told me she had been watching whatever it was for some time before coming to get me. I followed her to the cupola. Earth was below us, the night half rolling into view. The alien grid, those white lines that had carved oceans and coasts, looked dull now, like chalk markings in the rain. But something else glowed. On the western edge of Africa, a long oval of light was forming, soft at first, like the start of a sunrise. But it wasn't the sun. It was too narrow, too deliberate. It stretched over hundreds of miles, a quiet white bloom that thickened as we watched. "What is it?" Sato asked. "Another pulse," I said. "No," she said. "Something larger." She was right. It wasn't like the flashes we had seen before. It wasn't a tower shooting into the sky or a burst on the coastline. This was spreading, wide, smooth, like a sheet being pulled over the continent. Davies would have said something sharp, something final. Without him, the silence felt heavier. The glow expanded across the Sahara, soft and even. Nothing harsh, nothing violent. Just a slow claiming of ground, like frost on a window pane. "Do you think anything's alive down there?" Sato asked. Her voice had no hope in it, no fear either, just a tired wondering. "I don't know," I said. It was the closest I could come to an honest answer. The station drifted on. The glow widened. It swept across the desert, then into the forests of Central Africa. In some places it dimmed briefly, as if sinking into valleys. Then it brightened again. I watched it pass over the Congo like moonlight spilled from a broken bowl. Whatever was happening down there, it was no longer about destroying. It was about remaking. The shapes in orbit responded. They shifted positions, forming a more even ring. Some drifted downward, as if receiving signals from the ground. One passed close to us, closer than any of them had before. Its surface writhed with faint patterns, slick and dark, shifting too subtly for the eye to follow. I felt Sato move behind me, pulling instinctively away from the glass. The shape hovered there, a silent, weightless monolith. It was neither solid nor liquid nor gas, something between all three. And it pulsed faintly, in rhythm with the glow on Earth, like a heartbeat echoed in orbit. "It's coordinating," Sato whispered. "With what?" I asked. She looked down. "The planet." The shape drifted away again, silent as death. It returned to its place in the ring and held steady. The glow below kept spreading. We passed over Europe next, still dark, still lifeless. Nothing stirred except the old grid lines, barely flickering like distant memories. I felt a tightness in my chest, an ache, not for the cities or the history or the monuments, for the people, the billions who had filled that space with noise and heat and life, gone. Swept aside by something that didn't even need to kill them loudly. The orbital night grew colder. The world below looked softer, as if wrapped in gauze, and the glow from Africa spilled further, creeping up into the Mediterranean. Sato finally broke the silence. "Do you think they'll come for us?" She said it without fear, without anger. Just a question someone asks when they know the answer already, but want to hear it from another mouth. I didn't speak. I couldn't. The truth sat in my chest like a stone. Up here, we were an oversight, a leftover, a scrap of an old world that the new one had not yet cleared away. Nothing more. Hours later, Sato fell asleep in the cupola, her head resting against a handrail. I didn't wake her. She looked small, younger, fragile in a way I had never seen. I stayed awake, watching the Earth fade under its new light, watching the shapes in orbit hold their vigil, watching the last pieces of humanity drift into memory. In the quiet, in the loneliness that had grown bigger than the station itself, I felt something settle inside me. Not fear, not grief, acceptance. The world below was no longer ours, and soon neither would the sky be. Sato began sleeping more after Davies was gone. Not real sleep, the kind that restores you, but the thin, drifting kind where the body shuts down from exhaustion and the mind just follows behind. She floated in her bag for hours at a time, her breathing shallow, her hair suspended around her face like dark river grass. I didn't sleep much at all. The station felt quieter than it ever had. Even the familiar sounds, the fan hum, the soft clicks of metal expanding or contracting, felt distant, muted, as if the station itself were holding its breath with us. Sometimes I found myself drifting through the modules with no goal at all, just moving because staying still made my thoughts feel heavier. I would pass the storage lockers, the experiment racks, the galley. Everything that once had meaning now looked like artifacts in a museum no one would ever walk through again. When the Earth rolled beneath us, I tried not to look down. But the cupola always drew me in. It was the only window left between us and whatever the world had become, and turning away from it felt like turning away from the truth. The glow in Africa had spread further. It had crossed the Mediterranean and seeped into southern Europe, a soft curtain of white that erased mountains and plains with the indifference of a tide rolling over sand. The old lines, the thin, delicate grid that had first appeared in February, were nearly gone, faded into faint ghosts under the new illumination. Whatever the shapes had been preparing, they were finishing now. One evening, if evening means anything up here, Sato floated into the cupola beside me. She said nothing at first. She just looked down at the Earth, her eyes reflecting the pale glow covering half the hemisphere. "It's beautiful," she said finally. The words surprised me, not because she said them, but because they were true. There was a terrible beauty in the transformation below. The white glow spread like fog, settling into the cracks of continents, smoothing coastlines, filling deserts, blanching forests. It flowed with a softness that made the destruction seem gentle, almost merciful. "Do you think they're rebuilding it?" she asked. "Rebuilding what?" I said. "Earth," she said. "Their version of it." I had no answer. I didn't want to think about what their version meant, or what happened to everything that used to be ours. Sato breathed out slowly. "I miss the noise," she said. "People, cars, streets, even arguments." "I do too," I said. She looked over her shoulder at me. "Do you think anyone survived?" I felt the truth stir inside me like a cold stone. "No," I said. "I don't." She didn't cry. She just nodded, accepting the world's ending like someone accepting the end of a long, losing battle. Later, we drifted through the station checking water reserves. We were down to maybe 3 weeks if we rationed strictly, less if anything broke. There was no more pretending we might be rescued. No chance that another crew would arrive, no returning home, not anymore. "They'll come for us soon," Sato said softly. "Why?" I asked. "Because they're clearing the old world," she said, "and we're the last pieces of it." She was right. We both knew it. The station wasn't just a structure, it was a symbol, human-made, human-occupied, a remnant, and whatever was reshaping the Earth wasn't leaving remnants behind. That night, the ring shifted again. The dark shapes adjusted their positions with perfect symmetry, each one drifting into a new alignment, as if following instructions whispered through space. Sato watched them from her sleeping bag, her eyes barely open. "They're tightening the circle," she murmured. "Maybe," I said. But deep down, I knew she was right. They were closing in. I floated through the cupola one last time before trying to sleep. The Earth's surface glowed like a pearl under shallow water. The continents were losing their edges. The lines between sea and land blurred into one pale field. It looked peaceful, but it was the peace of something being erased, not healed. I rested my forehead against the glass. I tried to imagine what the Earth sounded like now. No cities, no voices, no birds, no waves, just the steady hum of whatever machinery or force the alien presence was using to remake the ground. I wondered if the planet felt pain. I wondered if anything living remained to feel it. When I turned away from the window, I found Sato watching me. Her face was unreadable. "We're alone," she said. "Yes," I said. She closed her eyes. "We won't be for long." I didn't write anything down for a while after that. Time had lost its meaning, and words felt like stones in my hands, heavy, useless. But now I feel the need to leave something behind, even if no one ever finds it, even if it drifts through space forever after we are gone. Sato sleeps most of the day now. Her strength has faded, not because of sickness, but because there's nothing left to push against. A person needs purpose to stay upright, and purpose is the one thing the aliens took from us without ever touching us. When she is awake, she moves slowly, carefully. Sometimes she asks questions she already knows the answers to. How many days of water left? 2 weeks, I say. Do you think they're watching us? Yes, I say. What do they want? I don't know, I say. But I do know. Deep down, I know. They want silence. They want a clean slate. They want a world with no ghosts in the corners. The alien glow has spread across almost the entire Earth now. Only pockets of the Antarctic remain unchanged, small islands of darkness surrounded by a sea of white light. It is like watching frost claim a window until only a few thin slivers of glass remain untouched. The dark shapes in orbit, those sentinels, have drifted closer. Some pass within a few hundred meters of the station now. They move slowly, deliberately, as if studying us. One hovered so close yesterday that its reflection covered half the cupola window. Its surface writhed with quiet patterns, like muscles beneath skin. Sato didn't look at it. She turned away and closed her eyes. "We are next," she said. That was the first time she admitted it aloud. I didn't answer. There was nothing left to say that hadn't already been spoken in glances and silence and broken routines. That night, if night can still be called night, I floated alone in the cupola. The earth beneath was almost entirely transformed. The glow was deeper now, denser, layered with shades of white and silver. It no longer looked like oceans or continents. It looked like something being poured, molded, smoothed over. A world being rewritten by a hand that did not care what came before. For a long time, I simply watched. The station turned. Earth rolled. The ring above it shifted with the calm of a heartbeat. Then I saw movement. From the edge of the atmosphere, a new shape rose, larger than any we had seen before. A great black form, smooth and curved and impossibly wide, lifting slowly into orbit. It looked like a piece of the planet itself breaking free. It drifted upward until it matched our altitude, then higher still. The smaller sentinels moved aside for it, parting like birds before a passing ship. Sato woke at some point and floated silently beside me. "What is that?" she whispered. "Something finishing its work," I said. The large shape reached the center of the ring. Then it stopped. Everything stopped, every sentinel, every flicker of light, every shift in orbit. Even the glow on Earth seemed to pause, as if the entire planet were holding still for whatever came next. Sato reached out and gripped my arm. Hard. The large shape pulsed once. A deep, slow ripple across its surface. The ring answered with a faint shimmer. Then the glow on Earth brightened in unison. "They're synchronizing," Sato said. I nodded. "For what?" She didn't answer. We didn't have to wait long. A beam, Thin at first, then widening, shot from the large shape toward the Earth. It wasn't light. It wasn't fire. It was something else, something that bent the space around it, warping the view like heat waves over desert sand. When it touched the surface, the entire hemisphere flared with a soft, blinding white. Sato gasped. The light washed over her face. For a moment she looked young again, peaceful, almost serene. Then the light faded, and the earth below was no longer blue or brown or green or gray. It was white, completely white, a smooth, unbroken sphere. No mountains, no oceans, no continents, no shadows. Just a perfect, uniform surface, like a pearl polished by patient hands. Sato covered her mouth and let out a sound that was neither cry nor breath, a small, fragile sound. And then she whispered the truth neither of us could deny anymore. They erased it. The sentinels began to move, slowly at first, then more directly. The large shape at the center of the ring pulsed again. This time, the pulse rippled outward, and every sentinel answered by adjusting their course toward us. Sato grabbed my hand. "Carl," she whispered. "They're coming." I squeezed her hand once, a simple gesture. The last one I had to give. The shapes closed in. The station trembled, just slightly, like a ship caught in the first breeze of a coming storm. Sato pressed her forehead to mine. "I'm not afraid," she said. I was, but I didn't say so. The nearest sentinel filled the cupola window. Its shifting black surface swallowed the stars. I felt something, pressure maybe, or a presence, pushing in around us. I took one last look at the earth, that smooth white sphere. A world without a past, without us. Then I closed my eyes. Whatever came next wasn't ours to witness. We were only the last lights to go out. Carl Clayborn, Low Earth Orbit, end of log.